You weigh almost 500 kilograms. The wind is moving across open sea ice at minus 40 degrees. You have not built a shelter. You do not need one. This is a single night in the life of a polar bear. For most of the year, it repeats itself without complaint. Your body temperature sits at a steady 37 degrees, the same as yours. The air around you is cold enough to freeze exposed skin in minutes. So how are you? An animal made of flesh and blood, just like any other mammal, completely unbothered by a temperature that would kill a human in under an hour? The answer starts beneath your fur, and it is stranger than most people expect. For decades, biologist Ian Stirling tracked polar bears across the western shore of Hudson Bay, building one of the longest continuous records of any large predator on Earth. What he and his successors found was a body built almost entirely around one problem: how to stay warm in a place that offers no warmth at all. Under your skin sits a layer of fat called blubber, sometimes more than 10 centimeters thick. Blubber is not just stored energy. It is a built-in coat, slowing the escape of heat from your core so effectively that your biggest danger in the Arctic is not freezing. It's overheating. That sounds backwards. An animal living at minus 40, worried about getting too hot. But polar bears have been recorded raising their body temperature during long chases or fast swims, sometimes dangerously so, because the same insulation that keeps the cold out also traps heat in. Your body is so efficient at conserving warmth that exertion itself becomes a risk. Above the blubber, your fur does something even more unusual. It isn't white because of white pigment. Each guard hair is actually hollow and clear, like a tiny tube of glass. Light bounces around inside these hollow strands and scatters back out, which is why you appear white or pale yellow depending on the light. Underneath all of it, your skin is black. Black skin absorbs whatever sunlight reaches it, pulling in extra warmth on the rare days the Arctic sun is strong enough to matter. So you are, in a very real sense, wearing a solar panel disguised as snow. University of Alberta researcher Andrew Derocher, who has spent much of his career studying how polar bears budget their energy, describes this combination of blubber, hollow fur, and dark skin as one of the most efficient cold weather systems in the animal kingdom. Efficient enough that a resting polar bear in a snowstorm can let snow settle directly on top of it without losing meaningful heat. The snow becomes its own extra layer of insulation, but staying warm is only half the problem. The other half is staying fed in a landscape with almost nothing to eat. Let's reconstruct a single hunting day. You wake on the sea ice, not from a den, but from a shallow depression scooped into snow, curled with your back to the wind, and your nose tucked beneath one paw to warm the air you breathe. There is no permanent shelter here. The ice itself is your floor, your walls, and your hunting ground, all at once. You walk for hours, sometimes tens of kilometers, scanning for the small breathing holes that ringed seals carve into the ice to surface for air. When you find one, you stop, and then you wait. Polar bears can remain almost motionless beside a single hole for hours, sometimes longer than a day, barely shifting their weight, waiting for the moment a seal rises to breathe. It's a hunting strategy built on patience rather than speed. One sudden movement, one early strike, and the seal is gone, diving back into water you cannot follow into without losing the advantage of surprise. Here is where the story gets harder than most documentaries let on. In 2018, researcher Anthony Pagano fitted polar bears with collars carrying small video cameras and activity sensors, recording exactly how much energy they burned during real hunts in the wild. The footage, gathered for a study published in the journal Science, revealed something that surprised even experienced biologists. Polar bears were burning energy faster than anyone had estimated, and most of their hunts were failing completely. Out of dozens of recorded hunting attempts, the majority ended with nothing. No seal, no meal, just hours of stillness and a long, costly walk back across the ice, burning calories with nothing to show for it. Think about that for a moment. The most powerful land predator on Earth, an animal capable of breaking a seal's skull with a single paw strike, fails far more often than it succeeds. Your survival here was never about overwhelming strength. It was about how rarely you actually needed to win, and how efficiently your body could afford to lose. This is the counterintuitive twist hiding inside the cold itself. The Arctic doesn't kill polar bears through low temperatures. Your fur and fat solve that problem almost completely. What actually threatens you is scarcity, the long stretches between successful hunts, and the sea ice you depend on to reach your prey in the first place. Seals need ice to breathe through. Polar bears need ice to hunt seals. Remove the ice, and the entire system collapses, regardless of how well insulated you are. Researchers monitoring the population near Churchill, Manitoba, supported in part by the fieldwork of organizations like Polar Bears International, have spent years documenting exactly this shift. As sea ice forms later in the fall and breaks up earlier in the spring, polar bears are spending more time on land, fasting longer, and arriving at the ice in poorer condition than bears did a few decades ago. The cold was never the enemy. Time without ice is. So picture it again, the full scene. A 500-kilogram predator perfectly insulated against a temperature that would be lethal to almost anything else, sitting motionless beside a hole in the ice for hours, betting an entire day's energy on a single moment of stillness paying off, failing more often than not, walking on anyway. There's something in that pattern worth sitting with. Most of what feels threatening in your own life probably isn't the obvious danger either. It's the quiet, ongoing scarcity, the long stretch between wins, the waiting that doesn't always pay off, but has to be repeated anyway, because the alternative is worse. A polar bear doesn't succeed by being unaffected by hardship. It succeeds by being extraordinarily well built for the specific hardship it actually faces, while still failing most of the time and continuing regardless. Its body solved the cold so thoroughly that cold stopped being the real story. The real story became patience, scarcity, and a shrinking platform of ice beneath it all. You weigh almost 500 kilograms. The wind is moving across open sea ice at minus 40 degrees. You have not built a shelter. You never needed one. What you needed was the ice still being there tomorrow.